Welcome to my channel. There are times in life when it feels like you're climbing a mountain covered in fog. You can't see who's ahead or behind you. No one is cheering. No one is watching. Yet you keep moving forward, step by step, holding on to your promise to yourself. The world around you feels quiet, almost too quiet. No one says, "I'm proud of you." No one seems to notice the battles you fight in silence. And sometimes you wonder, is it even worth it if no one sees what I'm going through? But here's the truth. It's in that silence, in that solitude, that a different kind of strength begins to grow. It's a strength that doesn't need approval or applause. The psychologist Carl Jung once said that every rebirth begins with something falling apart. When there's no one left to lean on, it doesn't mean you've reached the end. It means your soul is getting ready for transformation. A new chapter where your power starts coming from within. In today's video, we'll talk about that process, the 7 steps to rise even when you feel completely alone. Because it's when you stop waiting for others to lift you up that you discover something powerful. Everything you've been looking for, strength, love, peace, has always been inside you, waiting to be awakened. When that awakening happens, you don't just rise, you begin to walk with your own light. Step 1. Loneliness, the silent teacher of strength. There are moments when life begins to pull away from what's familiar. Conversations that once felt exciting now seem empty. People who used to be close start to drift. On the outside, everything looks the same. Your job, your routine, your relationships. But inside, something is shifting. Most people don't realize that this is the start of growth. They fear this stage because it feels like losing everything. But as Carl Jung described, this is the beginning of what he called the night sea journey, or the dark night of the soul. It's when you stop connecting with your old world and must travel through your own shadows before stepping into something new. The loneliness Jung spoke about isn't just being alone in a room. It's the deeper feeling of being separated from what once gave you a sense of belonging. You still smile, still speak, still show up. But deep down, you know that the world around you no longer speaks to your soul the way it used to. There comes a time when the world starts to feel unfamiliar, like it's speaking a language you no longer understand. And suddenly, it's just you. Many people think reaching this point means they've failed, but that's not true. This is actually the moment your soul begins to separate from the mask you once wore to fit in. That feeling of "no one understands me" isn't a sign that you're lost. It's a sign that you're getting closer to your real self. Carl Jung believed that real growth begins when you learn to face yourself in silence. Not when others are listening, but when the noise of the world fades and you finally start hearing your own voice. During this phase, many people panic. They throw themselves into work, relationships, or distractions to avoid the emptiness they feel. But the more you try to run from it, the bigger that emptiness becomes. Loneliness doesn't show up to punish you. It comes to deepen you, to help you rebuild your strength from the inside out. I once knew a woman who went through a painful divorce. She had always been surrounded by people, laughter, and noise. But after everything fell apart, her apartment became painfully quiet. Instead of running from the silence, she chose to face it. At first, she could only sit quietly for a few minutes. Then over time, she began to enjoy it. She started cooking for herself, reading, journaling, and reflecting on the questions she had always avoided. Months later, she told me something powerful. Silence isn't my enemy anymore. It's where I finally hear myself. That's what Jung called meeting yourself. The moment you stop running and finally come home to who you truly are. When there's no one left to depend on, you learn self-discipline. You learn steadiness. Like a mountain climber with no safety rope, every step becomes deliberate. Every action becomes a promise to yourself. And every promise kept becomes a brick that builds your strength. Loneliness doesn't come to break you down. It comes to make you unshakable. It's the gym of the soul, the place where your spirit is trained and your strength is forged. Looking back, you'll realize that those quiet, lonely months were when you were actually becoming the strongest version of yourself. I often think of an oak tree in winter. When every other tree loses its color and leaves, the oak stands tall and bare in the cold wind. It looks lifeless on the outside, but during that season, its roots are growing deeper, preparing for spring. We're the same. Every season of loneliness is like a spiritual winter. But if you stay patient and don't give up, spring will always follow. Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." So if you find yourself standing in the darkness of loneliness, don't be afraid. It's not a sign of weakness. It's proof that you're leaving behind the old path and stepping into a new one. For your soul to be reborn, it must first dissolve. And only when the world grows quiet can you finally hear the voice within whisper, "It's time to rise." Remember, no one is coming to lift you up. But that's not bad news, because this is the moment where your true power begins. No one can hand you resilience, but loneliness can teach you how to build it. Step 2. Stop seeking emotional comfort from others. After you learn to stand strong in solitude, another powerful truth begins to unfold. What drains us isn't loneliness. It's expecting someone else to fill that emptiness. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter most." When you rely on others to make you feel okay, every silence, delayed text, or lack of response feels like rejection. But that isn't love. It's emotional dependence. Jung described this as a sign of an unintegrated ego. When we haven't yet learned to find stability within ourselves, after you've faced your loneliness and learned to stand on your own, the next step is learning how to soothe yourself. When you stop chasing reassurance or approval from others, something powerful happens. Your true self begins to emerge. I once met a woman in a group therapy session who shared her struggle with this. She said she would panic if her boyfriend didn't reply to her messages. She'd check her phone again and again, imagining the worst. "I know it's irrational," she admitted, "but when he's silent, I feel like I don't exist." Through months of therapy, she discovered the fear wasn't really about him. It came from her past. As a child, whenever she cried or showed sadness, her parents would say, "Don't be dramatic," or they would simply walk away. She unconsciously learned, "My feelings don't matter." Since then, she'd spent her life searching for someone to prove otherwise. Jung called this emotional projection, when we use others as mirrors to measure our worth. When they respond with love, we feel valuable. When they withdraw, we lose our sense of self. But the truth is, no one can save you forever. The more you depend on others for emotional balance, the harder it becomes to regulate your own feelings. Learning to self-soothe doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming your own source of care. Learning to listen to yourself the way you wish others had. When sadness rises, don't run from it or beg someone to fix it. Instead, place your hand on your heart and whisper, "I'm here. I've got you." That small act marks the beginning of emotional independence, a key stage in your personal growth, when you stop merging with others and begin to stand as your own person. A person who knows how to comfort themselves doesn't need constant reassurance. They don't need fast replies or endless compliments to feel secure. They can sit alone in a cafe, enjoying their coffee, completely at peace with their own company. That isn't coldness. It's freedom. Freedom from the need to be validated. Jung once said, "All forms of dependence are the shadow of love." What we often call attachment is sometimes just the fear of being abandoned. The immature self constantly looks for someone to confirm its worth. But when you face that fear honestly, you'll see it's not emptiness. It's an invitation. An invitation to become the loving parent you once needed, but never had. And then you realize the strength you thought had to come from someone else has always been within you. Modern psychology calls this emotional independence. It's not about rejecting love or relationships. It's about refusing to hand over control of your emotions to anyone else. You can still love deeply, still connect fully, but you no longer lose yourself when someone leaves. When a chapter ends, you may feel sadness, but you don't fall apart, because now you have you. When someone goes silent, you can listen without losing your sense of worth. Emotional independence means you don't need a rescuer. You can lift yourself up, wipe your own tears, and keep moving forward. Only from that place can real love exist. Not love born out of fear or need, but love that's freely chosen. Maybe that's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Because when you stop looking to others for comfort, you begin to see your own strength. A strength that doesn't rely on anyone, doesn't borrow energy, and can never be taken away. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to make you happy is the moment you truly begin to grow. So if you're in that season right now, no one understands you, no one comforts you, no one lifts you up, remember, it's okay. No one coming doesn't mean you're abandoned. It means it's time to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. Whisper quietly to yourself, "I don't need anyone to save me. I just need to not abandon myself." That's the second step. The turning point in your rise when you begin to find strength even without support. And if you're living in that stage right now, learning to stand tall when no one else understands, take it as a sacred sign that your soul is growing up. If this message resonates with you, leave one simple word in the comments, "Still," as a way of saying, even when no one stands beside me, I still choose to stand with myself. Step 3. Stop complaining. The language of the victim ego. Once you've learned how to stand strong in solitude and soothe yourself, another challenge appears, one that's quieter but just as powerful. Stop complaining. Complaining is the ego's favorite disguise. It keeps you stuck in the comfort zone, the space where you can tell yourself you're a victim, that life is unfair, and that you have a reason not to change. But here's the irony. Every time you complain, You're reinforcing the belief that you are powerless. You're silently telling yourself, I have no strength. Carl Jung described this as the shadow of self-pity. When you're lost in that shadow, you stop acting and start repeating the same question over and over. Why me? As if the universe owes you an explanation. But the real question isn't why me? It's, what can I do with this? The moment you ask that, everything begins to shift. The energy trapped in complaint starts to move again. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Every time you complain, your unconscious mind is in control. It keeps you repeating the same stories and blaming the same situations, making you feel like life just happens to you. But when you stop and look beneath the complaint, when you ask, what emotion is really behind this? You take your power back. You step out of the victim role and become conscious again. Complaining tricks you into thinking you're doing something. It feels active, like you're processing or releasing. But in truth, you're standing still. Each complaint is simply delayed action, a way to stay in the story instead of changing it. When you keep blaming circumstances, you drain the energy that could have transformed them. People may hurt you. Life may disappoint you. But only you can decide what that hurt becomes. A chain that holds you down, or a lesson that sets you free. Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And that's the truth most people avoid. That healing is not about rewriting the past, but reclaiming your power in the present. Every time you choose action over complaint, you're teaching your soul a new pattern, that you are not powerless, that life is not happening to you, but through you. The world won't always hand you fairness. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will test you. But strength is not born in comfort. It's revealed in resistance. Like the river stone, you are shaped by the currents that once threatened to destroy you. What seemed like chaos was polishing your character. What felt like loss was clearing space for what you were meant to carry next. So when you feel tempted to complain, pause and ask yourself, is this helping me grow, or is it keeping me small? Because every complaint is a seed. It either grows weeds of bitterness or gardens of wisdom. And you decide which one takes root. You may not control the current, but you can control what you become because of it. Let life shape you, not shatter you. Let the flow refine you, not define you. One day, you'll look back and realize that what once felt unbearable was the very force that made you unbreakable. Sometimes being believed isn't as important as staying true to yourself. The silence of being unseen is not punishment. It's preparation. It's in that sacred obscurity that your soul learns to move without applause, to create without validation, to love without needing to be loved back. The unseen seasons are where real power is forged because they strip away the noise of approval and force you to listen to your own voice. Validation from the world is fleeting. It feeds your ego, not your essence. But when you validate yourself, you build an unshakable foundation. You stop performing for acceptance and start creating from alignment. You stop waiting for permission to shine and realize the light was always within you. There's a hidden strength in obscurity. When no one is watching, you meet the rawest version of yourself, the part that shows up without reward, the part that chooses discipline over distraction, purpose over pity. That's the self that grows roots deep enough to sustain you when the spotlight finally comes. Because if your confidence depends on being seen, it will vanish the moment the lights go out. But if it's rooted in truth, nothing can take it from you. So when the world is silent and no one claps, keep going. When your efforts go unnoticed, keep building. When your name isn't mentioned, keep believing. Because the universe always honors those who move with quiet consistency. You don't need the world to see you for your work to matter. Your becoming is its own validation. Remember this: obscurity is not rejection, it's refinement. The world may not recognize you yet, but the silence is shaping you for the moment when it does. Until then, keep honoring your truth in private. That's where the foundation of greatness is laid. And when you truly embrace that, something miraculous happens. You begin to glow from within. That glow isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It's quiet, steady, and undeniable. The kind of light that doesn't need to prove itself because it simply is. You start walking differently, not because you want to be seen, but because you finally see yourself. You no longer chase acknowledgement because you've realized that the world's silence was never emptiness. It was space for you to hear your own voice. That's the paradox of becoming. The less you need validation, the more powerful your presence becomes. People may not understand it, but they feel it. That grounded energy of someone who no longer seeks approval, only alignment. You stop competing, comparing, performing. You begin to create. Every act, every word, every step becomes an expression of your truth. This is the energy of someone who has met their self, the calm authority that doesn't waver when unseen, the peace that doesn't shatter when unacknowledged. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But few realize that becoming requires the courage to walk through the silence where no one claps, no one notices, and no one saves you. Only you. When you validate yourself, you reclaim every fragment of power once scattered through others' opinions. You come home to yourself. And in that homecoming, the search ends. Because in truth, validation was never something to be received. It was always something to be remembered. From then on, she began journaling daily, not to complain, but to write what she was learning from the pain. Months later, she said something I'll never forget. I didn't rebuild my business the same way. I rebuilt myself first, and the business followed. That's the hidden gift inside every fall. It breaks the illusion of control, forcing you to rebuild on truth instead of fear. The old self, the one that needed approval, applause, and external validation, crumbles. And what's left is the raw, honest, indestructible you. Failure, when met consciously, becomes fire. It burns away the false identities you've outgrown. It refines you like gold in the furnace. Every scar becomes sacred evidence of your evolution. In Jungian terms, each fall draws you deeper into individuation, the sacred process of integrating the shadow, owning your wounds, and awakening the self. When you stop seeing failure as proof that you're unworthy and start seeing it as a sacred initiation, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start realizing, this is happening for me, to make me whole. Remember, the phoenix doesn't rise in spite of the fire. It rises because of it. So the next time you fall, don't curse the ground. Place your hand on your heart and whisper, "I am still here." Then ask the question that turns every collapse into transformation. What is this fall trying to teach me about who I really am? Because once you rise from your own ashes, you stop fearing the fall. You realize the ground you hit was never there to break you, only to awaken you. That's how the strong rise quickly, not because they never fail, but because they never stay fallen. They learn, they adjust, they grow. And in doing so, they become unstoppable. If you're in a season of falling, let this be your reminder. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt. And if you feel that truth stirring in you, that sacred defiance to rise again, even when no one reaches out, leave one word in the comments: rising, as a declaration that your failures will not define you. They will refine you. So don't wait for someone to lift you up. Rise quickly, firmly, with a heart still warm, because one day you'll look back and realize every collapse was a conversation between your soul and the universe. Every fall was a sacred summons to remember your strength. And every time you rose, you didn't just recover, you evolved. That's what it means to turn failure into fire. You stop asking for the storm to end, and you learn to walk through it with grace. You stop waiting for rescue, because you've become your own resurrection. The fire that once burned you now burns for you. And that warmth, that inner flame, becomes the quiet radiance of those who have been through the dark and returned shining. If you feel that truth stirring inside you, that refusal to let your story end in defeat, let the world know by typing one word in the comments: fire, as a sign that you've chosen to rise, not in spite of the fall, but because of it. That night, she decided to start again. Not for applause, not for inspiration, but for the quiet responsibility to herself. Every morning since, she wakes before dawn, not because she wants to, but because she has chosen to. And that choice, repeated in silence day after day, has become her power. That's the hidden alchemy of will. It transforms ordinary moments into sacred rituals. It's showing up when no one is watching. It's keeping your promise to yourself, even when the fire of feeling has gone out. True will isn't loud. It doesn't roar with passion. It hums, steady, faithful, constant. It's the force that turns fleeting inspiration into enduring creation. Because when emotion fades, will remains. When excitement dies, devotion begins. And devotion is what separates the wanderer from the master. You see, mastery isn't about talent. It's about reverence. The daily honoring of what matters most, even when your heart feels empty. Jung called it the alignment of ego with self. The moment when your smaller will bows to the greater purpose that lives within you. When you reach that point, you no longer wait for the mood to strike. You act because it's who you are. You write because you are a writer. You lead because you are a leader. You love because love is your nature, not your feeling. So if you're in that stage right now, feeling uninspired, weary, or disconnected, remember this. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You just need to begin, and readiness will follow. Because that's what it means to have will over emotion. To do what must be done, even when your heart trembles, until your actions ignite your spirit once again. If this truth speaks to you, type one word in the comments: will, as your declaration that you will no longer wait for permission from your emotions. You'll move and let purpose catch up. Number 7, you don't need anyone to understand you. everything you seek is within. There comes a moment after all the effort, after you've stayed disciplined, walked your path alone, and kept your faith, when the world around you still feels silent. No one notices. No one thanks you. No one seems to understand what you've been carrying inside. And in that quiet, a new kind of emptiness appears. Not the pain of loneliness, but the ache of being unseen. You start to wonder, does any of this matter? If no one understands me, am I still on the right path? But that's the moment your soul whispers the truth. You don't need anyone to understand you. You only need to understand yourself. Carl Jung believed that the final stage of growth is individuation. When you stop trying to be understood and start living from your inner truth, it's the stage where you realize that peace doesn't come from being accepted, but from being aligned. People may not understand your silence, your focus, your withdrawal from distractions, and that's okay. They're not meant to. Because what's happening inside you is sacred. It's not meant to be explained. It's meant to be lived. Every great transformation is misunderstood at first. The caterpillar looks lifeless to those who don't see the wings forming inside. And just like that, your quiet phase, your unseen effort, is not a sign of failure. It's the cocoon of becoming. When you stop needing understanding, you set yourself free. You stop chasing explanations. You stop defending your choices. You stop waiting for applause. And in that stillness, you finally hear your own voice. Calm, certain, alive. That's when everything changes. Because what you were seeking in others, approval, recognition, love, was always waiting within you. You just needed enough silence to hear it. I once met a man who spent years trying to convince his family to understand his dreams. He wanted to be a writer, but they only saw it as foolish. After years of arguing, he stopped explaining and simply began writing every morning before work. A year later, he held his first published book in his hands. I realized I didn't need them to understand me, he said. I just needed to honor the part of me that understood itself. That's the essence of inner freedom, to walk your path without seeking permission. When you stop depending on understanding, you step into self-trust. When you stop explaining, you step into peace. You'll know you've reached this stage when you can smile even when no one claps, when you can work in silence and still feel complete. That's not loneliness. That's sovereignty. That's the moment your inner light becomes stronger than any external approval. And when that happens, you finally understand what Jung meant when he said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." So if you're walking this path, unseen, uncelebrated, misunderstood, remember this: you are not behind. You are simply being refined. Because every soul that walks alone is being guided toward its own light. Everything you've been searching for, love, peace, validation, purpose, has always been within you. And when you find it, you'll never chase it again. If this truth resonates with you, leave one word in the comments: within. Let it be your declaration that you no longer seek to be understood, you seek to be whole. The final lesson: when no one is left to lean on, do all these efforts even matter? That's the final question. The one that comes when you've done everything right, yet still find yourself alone. When no one is left to lean on, you must find your own light. When you crave understanding, you're still asking others to validate your existence. but no one can truly understand you. Not because people don't care, but because only you have walked through the private corridors of your own soul. Only you know how deep the silence has been, how heavy the unseen battles have felt. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. All the answers you seek are already within your unconscious. You only need enough stillness to hear them." After years of living to be understood, you realize something liberating. Not everyone has the capacity to see you at your depth. Most people only see the parts of you that make them comfortable. And that's not their fault. In a world where everyone is still trying to find themselves, few can truly see another soul. And so, you return inward. That's where all your contradictions begin to harmonize. Fear and courage, pain and healing, darkness and light. There, in the sacred balance of opposites, you no longer need anyone to confirm your worth. You simply know that you are being true to your soul, and that is enough. When that realization settles, you stop looking for saviors, because you've become your own. I once heard the story of a young painter who spent years creating for trends and sales, chasing approval until her art lost its soul. In exhaustion, she left the city, rented a small cabin by the lake, and went silent for a month. She painted again, not to show, not to sell, but to listen to what her soul wanted to say. When she returned, her work had changed, raw, alive, full of truth. A gallery in Berlin discovered her new pieces by chance and invited her to exhibit. She said, "When I stopped trying to be seen, people finally began to see me." That is the paradox Jung described. When you stop seeking outwardly, you become a center of inward gravity. Because creative energy, love, and wisdom don't come from being understood. They come from accepting yourself, even the parts no one else can understand. Like a lighthouse in the night sea, you don't shout to be seen. You don't move to seek attention. You simply stand in your own light, and by doing so, guide others who are lost. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." When you stop asking the world, "Who am I?" and start asking yourself, "What do I truly need?" the veil begins to lift, and then, like dawn breaking over dark waters, clarity arrives, not with noise, but with stillness. Carl Rogers called it the curious paradox. When I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. No one will ever fully understand you. But that doesn't mean you can't be loved. It simply means you must first love yourself enough to stop performing for the world. Because the moment you accept that no one else can complete you, you finally become whole. And that's when you realize every struggle mattered. Every silent night, every lonely climb, every unseen effort, it all led you here, to the place where you no longer need to be understood, because you've become the one who understands yourself. Because real love doesn't require full understanding, only full acceptance. And when you learn to accept yourself in all your complexity, depth, and contradiction, you begin to radiate a quiet energy, the kind that makes others feel safe simply by being near you. Strangely, the moment you stop seeking someone to understand you, you begin to be understood. Not through words, but through presence. The ones who truly belong in your life will feel it, without explanation. If life has ever exhausted you with the need to be understood, rest. Sit in silence. Place your hand over your heart and listen. That voice inside, faint but steady, knows the way. It knows what to release, where to go, and how to begin again. And then you'll realize no one needs to complete you, because you were never incomplete. Everything you've ever searched for, love, peace, understanding, are simply different faces of one thing, coming home to yourself. That's how you rise, even when no one is by your side, not through the noise of proving, but through the quiet of awakening. A person who can rise when no one is there isn't someone who feels no pain, but someone who turns loneliness into a teacher, silence into fuel, and every fall into a foundation of strength. They don't live to be seen. They live to be honest with their soul. When the world goes silent, they listen within. When no one believes, they hold faith themselves. And from that space that once felt empty, another kind of power is born. A power that needs no proof. Because in the end, this journey isn't about becoming unbreakable. It's about becoming authentic, with your fears, your will, and your own light. When you stop waiting to be saved, you realize you were never weak. You just hadn't yet seen how strong you really are. If this message has awakened something in your heart, share it. Because maybe someone out there needs this reminder too, that they are strong enough to stand, to heal, and to keep believing in themselves. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey has just begun. The journey of becoming yourself. Steady, clear, and free, even when no one stands beside you.